Welcome to a Syria's podcast. I'm Jimmy Reed. Today we're talking about Syria. The Middle East has been a subject of controversy. More than 250,000 Syrians have lost their lives in a 4.5 years armed conflict, which began with anti-government protests before escalating into a full-scale civil war. More than 11 million others have been forced from their homes as forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad and those opposed to his rule battle each other, as well as jihadist militants from Islamic State. Today we're joined by Washington Post journalist Dav Stevens, who is prepared to say what needs to be said about Syria, where he currently joins us from. Dav, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm right here with you, Jim.
Dav, you were there during the pro-democracy protests in March of 2011 and the subsequent protests which ignited this divided country into war. Have you seen any observable changes in the political climate of Syria?
Well, if there are any changes, it's changes for the worse. The people are becoming more and more impatient, doing things that they never thought that they would be doing. And what we're seeing here is just utter desperation from Syrian citizens to escape from this hell-like shantytown. Here in Damascus, where I'm situated, there's just a vile presence of an absolute disgust between the citizens and what they call their incompetent government.
Can you please inform our listeners of President Bashar al-Assad? We obviously know his regime is continuing violence against the Syrian population, and the U.S. has opted to finance rebel groups opposing al-Assad. Could you give us some details on his political methodology?
Absolutely. Well, the problem began in 2011 when the rebellion started to form. And Assad's acts of counterinsurgency basically escalated this problem into a full-scale civil war that began in 2012 and basically is what we're seeing today. Now, what Assad did is that he put all of his trust into the military to take care of any type of rebellion that would form. And basically this limited his control and power over Syria. And throughout his presidency, he's been judged for not being the strong, rightful, and powerful leader that the country of Syria needs.
You mean, as he appears quite frail, the Syrians judged him for not having the same strength as his father, Hafez al-Assad, who maintained and ran a generally stable country. But as of recently, the Syrian economy has been hit by massive economic sanctions restricting trade with the Arab League, Australia, Canada, the European Union. Can you shed some light on the decline of the economy from a more civilian perspective?
Well, there are many other countries, such as the U.S., that have enforced trade sanctions leading to instability associated with the civil war, which has basically reversed previous growth in the Syrian economy to a state of decline for the years 2011 and 2012. According to the United Nations, total economic damages of the Syrian civil war are estimated to be at $143 billion as late as 2013. This is the most recent statistic I have access to, and I must say it's quite the mind-boggling figure.
What sort of sectors are affected by this economic turmoil?
Well, before the conflict began, oil and mining and agriculture were the two major industries. This was until a major drought occurred in 2008, which basically crippled the agriculture sector, which accounted for 25% of the gross domestic product of Syria. And you can imagine how that drought basically just hurt the economy tremendously. This, along with the many sanctions and embargoes placed on Syria, the oil and mining sector has fallen dramatically. About 40% of the labor force is employed by the government services sector. Just under 70% of all Syrians earn less than $100 a month. And more than 700,000 homes in Syria reportedly have no income.
Dav.
Hello?
Dav, are you still with us?
Jim? Hello? Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry, we just experienced a routine bomb warning. However, the coast
I have
is
here
clear.
that Syria has experienced a 20% unemployment rate, a truly staggering number. The GDP must also look abysmal.
It really is. The GDP sits at 40.41 billion and a measly 4,645 per capita in the year of 2012. And in 2014 measured in at $3,881. So it's evident that the negative impact of the civil war has had on the Syrian economy. The Syrian pound, the main currency for Syria, has also lost 80% of its value since the conflict began.
Obviously, Syria's main staples such as oil and mining and agriculture have been hit hard, with the oil industry having exports fall from 12 billion to 2 billion. With the starting amount of refugees fleeing Syria, it is no wonder the country has fallen into shambles. Can the 23% population decrease be felt there, Dav?
It sure can. Well, because of the constant warfare, Syria's construction workers have been hit very hard. I can see slums everywhere where people have just fled their homes. Debris is strewn across every pathway. It's just total anarchy.
I bet it is. Obviously, there's a huge social risk in living in Syria, as even innocent children are losing their lives. But what we are doing is allowing 25,000 Syrian refugees in to ensure their safety.
As much as I respect you and your country, Jim, I'm not so sure if I necessarily respect this idea. We can clearly see the impact of ISIS is a global one, and by allowing that many people in such a short time is basically setting North America up to possible.
We'll have to consider the social and economic liberties that my country and North America as a continent must take part in. As members of the UN, we have a responsibility to see that refugees
I'm not sure you
are
clearly understand the
given
influence of a group that ISIS has on Muslims around the world.
We'll have someone who does. We'd like to send it over to our expert, William Thomas, who's currently in the depths of the Syrian conflict.
Yes, absolutely. How are we doing, Jimmy? I've been listening to your podcast, and you guys have been talking about the civil war between the rebellion and the Assad military. But I believe the attention should be drawn towards the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. ISIS is an Islamic extremist group, believing that things they do are in favor of Prophet Muhammad, and they've seized a large chunk of land spanning from northern Syria to Iraq. And the main goal is basically to get everyone to understand and adhere to their perception of Islam. And they're doing this in a very extreme way, showing videos of live beheadings, crucifixions, warfare, shootings, bombings, just everything you can possibly think of. It's a nightmare. From a scale of 1 to 10, I'd have to give this country a 10 on the risk scale. It's incredibly risky. Thank you.